Hey everybody, welcome to Season 2 of the Author on Wheels podcast. My name is John Wood, and I am affectionately known as Author on Wheels. Join us as we have some incredible interviews with some incredible authors on the Author on Wheels podcast. Kenneth Muyingo is the author of the book Opening Up, The Strength You Need to Persevere. He is an inspirational speaker, and he is the creator of the Opening Up training workbook and lead coach of the Opening Up Life Transformation Program. Kenneth, who energizes people to meet the challenges of the world around them, he draws lessons from his and other people's life experiences. The thread is forever strengthened to proclaim why you can't afford to settle for less, but rather aim high to achieve great things and actively make your dreams come true. And in so doing, make the world a better place. Kenneth Muyingo never tires to use his energies to transform the world. He's helping individuals write books and become highly paid, published authors. We were excited to have Kenneth Muyingo on the show back in January, and we are even more excited to have him back for an update on his work. So let's invite Kenneth Muyingo to Season 2 of the Author on Wheels podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Author on Wheels podcast, Season 2, Episode number 5. My name is John Wood, and today we are back with another update episode. As you'll all know, back in Season 1 of the Author on Wheels podcast, we sat down in early January with author and motivational speaker Mr. Kenneth Muyingo. Today is October 26th, 2021. Kenneth is back in the studio with us today to get to have an update on where he has been and what he's been doing. Kenneth, what's been going on? How have you been?
Oh, thank you so much, John, for having me back here again. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. And basically, what I've been up to is I've focused a lot on coaching, just helping other people just figure out what they need to figure out to be the best versions of themselves, and also wrapping up with my program for writing books that I'm launching out this winter.
That is incredible. Now, do you have a date of when that program is going to launch?
Yes, indeed. I am looking at December 7th.
That is incredible. That is incredible. So you've basically focused your entire energy on that over this past few months during the crisis period.
Yes, indeed.
Really over the last year and a half, really.
Oh, yes.
It must take a lot out of you. It must take a lot of energy to do something like that.
Yes, indeed. But when you think about the alternative, which is to just lay by and let life happen,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth it to just choose to run for something and make it happen. I've found that while going through this whole journey, the thing that has been most valuable for me is who I have become in the process. It's not so much about what I have been doing now that I'm looking at it for what it is, but the
Mm-hmm.
transformation that has happened within myself, even just with getting to the position that I can be present for someone else through a coaching conversation. I have to have dealt with my own stuff, my own limitations, if I could say it like that,
Mm-hmm.
because we cannot take someone to a place that we have not been. We cannot give what we don't have. And sometimes I think that's what holds us back, is that we are trying to give something to other people that we have not yet grasped or really gotten hold of for ourselves.
That is the best thing I've ever heard from anybody. Really, I mean, yes, looking at it from everyone has a limitation, and
Yeah.
you said it correctly. Everybody has a limitation, but here on the Author on Wheels podcast, everybody has the opportunity to let those limitations show, you know.
Yeah.
basically what everybody has is the opportunity to tell their own story with however in however of a way they can. So that actually, and my computer just turned on, great. That actually, what's the word here I can actually think of, um that gives me the motivation to go through with the projects that I feel like I have not been able to wholeheartedly put into
Yeah,
effect. I mean,
most definitely.
I've written 3 books, and the one of them just got published back in, I believe, May, my last one. And I've been focusing my energy on this whole new journey that I've been going on. I've obviously redone the podcast. I've set foot on, or not set foot, but I've put pen to paper on part 2 of my autobiography.
Yeah,
And getting to just sit down and hear these stories and hear these updates from people like you, it inspires me to not only keep going, but to go the extra mile. Because that
indeed.
I believe that's something that you've instilled in me without even knowing it. You've
Okay.
given me the opportunity to let myself go the extra mile, and
Yeah.
I believe that's kind of what you do with your motivational speaking and with all the coaching that you do.
Yes, indeed. It's what happens with most of us sometimes is uh, we have just not grasped the extent to which we are capable or our actual potential. That even when we feel like we are performing at our optimum best, we have just scraped the surface of what we are capable of doing. And like what you're sharing, most especially when we look into our own story, I I've got to a point to realize that our own stories are like paintings. That when we share our stories, when we tell our stories, two things happen. That uh, the person who hears our story could get insight, inspiration, or even like a major breakthrough from listening to our own story. But the reverse is also true, that we ourselves may get deeper revelation and new lessons just from looking back from what we have been through and the journey that we have been on, because everything that we have been through has played a part in bringing us to where we are. And sometimes what happens is uh, we try to push some of the experiences that were painful and hard under the carpet, or just to like uh, present it like nothing happened, or that uh, it just that's just not part of our experience. And when we do that, something happens, that we end up getting that there's things we feel we want to do. We know we have been given these things to do, because for me, my confirmation for this is I wouldn't feel that I want to do something unless it has come to me from somewhere, because I have not put this desire in myself. I've had interactions with some people, and I'm talking about, yeah, when I just was thinking about writing my book, and I'm talking to them, I would like to publish a book and share my story with the world. And they were like, I don't have that. I, how can you just feel like you want to share your story with the world? And I realized this has come to me from somewhere, because it's not just about me and what I have been through as much as it is about other people that are going to benefit from my own experience, because I believe that we must be willing to learn from what other people have been through, because no one has enough time to experience everything.
What I can get from that is exactly what I was putting into my notes writing this interview out and
Yeah,
kind of going over talking points. Each story paints a picture,
yeah,
and some of them, all of these stories. that you hear, they don't turn out to be Rembrandt paintings or Van Gogh paintings right off the bat. You
Yeah.
know, it takes time to paint the full story and to tell the full story, because your story isn't done yet.
Exactly.
You're not going to give up on your story right then and there. You're not going to be like, okay, chapter 1 is over, I give up, you know.
Yeah.
And nobody should be like that. And even though, yes, I've felt like that, season whatever of my life is over, I don't want to go on.
Yeah.
There's always that higher power that says, hey, you have the opportunity, you have the willpower, fight on, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing. Indeed. And just like you say, our stories are just still unfolding. And sometimes we just go through experiences and we feel, yeah, maybe this is it. But actually, if we are real with ourselves, we realize that if we are still here, the the curtains have not gone down. The show is on, and we are the main character in this script called our life. And what happens sometimes when we uh, don't stand up to play the part of the main character in our story, we become extras, that we start to like just watch our life being played by, like just think of it like you're watching a movie of your life, and instead of being the main character in this script of your life, that we're just uh, watching us just pass us by because of not acknowledging or just dealing with whatever it is that we need to deal with, to get to that place of realizing that as long as we are still here, whatever has happened, yes, it may not be what we had expected. It may not have uh, worked out in our favor. But if we are still here, no experience, no struggle, no pain will be wasted. That everything we have been through will be used to just help us get to that place of feeling fulfilled as human beings, but also to serve other people with our gifts.
Ah, that is the most wonderful thing I've ever heard. And I even took some notes of just what you were saying about the main character, us being the main character in the script of life, and kind of what you just said a second ago was basically us even using the wasted scraps of our story
Yeah,
to put everything together. That's mainly what life is about, is
yeah,
using even the table scraps, you know, because you come to the table and you finish the entire meal except for the scraps, you've
yeah,
wasted the meal. But even using
exactly.
scraps of even just that, correlate it to our story being told. We don't want to just take, bits and pieces. So, take a year out here. We want to use the entire thing,
Yeah,
not just the bulk, but the scraps. So
indeed,
I, I, I couldn't put
indeed,
it any better than myself. And
indeed.
I I've even come to that point myself of using the scraps of my life,
Yeah, yeah,
because I've looked at it like this. You know, you've got the main picture unfolding in front of you. It's like you basically just get in the car and you start driving, and your life unfolds right in front of you as you're driving, and you're looking
yeah,
at and you're taking in all the scenery, and you say, "Ugh, there's some bad weather coming up. I don't want to
yeah,
go through there, so I'm going to take a detour." But here's the thing: you can't take a detour in life.
yeah,
You know,
indeed,
life is about taking those experiences, grabbing them by the bootstraps, and running with it. You know,
indeed,
like
indeed,
like picture a football player grabbing the ball, running it to the end zone for a touchdown, and winning the game. That's what life is about. Grabbing our life by the hand and just running with it. No strings attached, just run with it. So I
indeed.
think that's my takeaway from this, is just run with it. If life hands you a bad something, run with it. Make something good
Most,
out of it.
most definitely.
Use the table scraps you're given, because you only get one life.
Yeah. And every moment of life is final. Sometimes we get to, it's sort of like we have been told a lie that we can rehearse out this of life, that the script, actually the movie is playing out even this moment right here, that even if we did this again some other time, it's going to be different because this is happening exactly the way it was supposed to happen, and we may want it to go in a certain direction and it may end up going in a completely different direction, and that's just the beauty of life. And sometimes it's not perfect, and sometimes this is what holds us back. What you were sharing about just sharing bits and pieces of our own life, I realized that what happens most cases is it's easier for us to just share the highlights of our life with the world and just leave out the rest. Sort of like just show the world the good parts of who we are and what we have been through. But actually, the real value or the real gold is in the mess. The things that we have uh, tried to achieve the way that we wanted them, or the things that we actually attempted and we didn't succeed and we had to learn something. I like the way I like to say it is that the mess is what makes up our message. That the message of our life is derived from the messes that we have been through. And sometimes it's hard for us to get to that point and own our own experiences. And I think it leans a lot to being vulnerable, not in the way that says that I am not okay or something is missing, but in a way that says, look, this is who I am, this is where I have been, and this is what I'm dealing with. But I am still here, and this is what I have to offer. And I've realized that people relate more to that rather than uh, a picture perfect situation that is difficult or hard to relate to.
Again, you've blown me away. Basically, what I got from that was sharing the blooper reel of our life. It's like we're sharing the blooper reel, but we're living out the raw footage by ourselves. We don't
Yeah,
want people to see the raw footage of our life. We just want them to see, oh, yeah, here's the blooper reel. Here's 25 years of a blooper reel that you're going to see that happens, but I'm the one living the pure, raw, honest, sometimes hell that we go
yeah,
through. And it's not like we make up bits and pieces of our life just as filler. It's how the game is played. It's how the book is written. It's
yeah,
how the it's how life begins and how life ends, basically. You
most
know.
definitely.
And I like what you said, and I'd actually like to use this in the information of the interview. The mess is what makes up our message.
That's right.
I couldn't have thought of anything better than to use that, because yes, what we've made up as a mess of our life could in turn be our message to the world.
It is because when we think about, for example, if somebody would ask and say, tell me about the number of times that you have been really happy in the last month, unless you are really conscious that you are mindful, it may be hard to remember. But if somebody asks you, tell me about the low moments that you had this month, you could like relieve or just give it all out in detail because somehow, somewhere, that just happens to stick more than the good, or we just happen to remember that. And part of the reason I think is because it's it's not in the times when we are happy that we actually experience breakthroughs or transformation, but it's in the times when we fall down and in the process of getting up that we learn valuable lessons. The way I like to put this out is like when we were in school, the teachers that taught us best gave us the lessons, and after we got the lessons, we got exams. And based on these exams, we were promoted to another class. And so the cycle of education continues. Life is the exact opposite. You get the exam first, and then you learn the lesson later. And what happens most cases is we get an exam and we refuse to learn the lesson. And then this same situation keeps playing back in different forms. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It's just playing back. It's coming back because there's a lesson that we need to learn, which is the foundation for our next exam, but we have refused to learn it. And it takes willingness to just go to that place of pain, because that's just the times that we pick up the most valuable lessons. For me, right now, even as I continue to live my life, the things that most drive me, the lessons and the principles that I live by, are experiences that I picked up from my experience when I was locked up in a detention center for 10 months just because of my immigration status. And I got to realize that this is where I was, and I hated it. I cried myself to sleep. But when I sat down and I started to reflect on this whole experience and to see what it is that it did in me, I got to a conclusion that it actually did not happen to me, but rather it happened for me. Because even to this day, I get lessons out of it. One of my key driving principles is, let me see what will happen if I don't give up. When I'm trying to do something and it's challenging, I'm going into a territory that I have not been before. This is what I go with at the forefront. Let me see what will happen if I don't give up. Because that's just what I told myself when I was in that place in the detention center. And I said, okay, this is where I am right now, and I don't know what to do. The judge says I have to stay here for 10 months simply because I don't have immigration status. And now I'm looking back on it. I'm a Dutch citizen, but I'm also still a Ugandan. So I'm a dual citizen of the world. I have two passports and I hold those passports legally. I have the rights of two countries. And it's only because I did not give up on something that I knew in my heart that I wanted to do. And I don't say this to impress you, but to impress
Mhm.
upon you that whatever it is that you want, if you're listening to us, it is possible for you. It is possible for you. Don't settle for anything less than you. If you feel something in your heart, there's a reason you feel it like you do. So go for it.
I remember back in our first interview when you were telling your story,
Yeah,
and I will admit, hearing some parts of your story upset me
yeah,
because to hear that you went through that and came out through it and became the man that you are today humbles me because we all have moments in our life where we fail, everybody.
yeah, yeah,
You have moments in your life where you feel like you're a failure, and you have that moment where you're just sitting there and you're like, well, what am I going to do now?
yeah,
But you can all take a page from Kenneth's story because he basically, you've heard the phrase, started from the bottom, now we're here. Kenneth literally started from the bottom at the very pit of darkness, and he's raised himself up to the man he is today. And one of the most probably thought provoking ideas that I've heard from Kenneth is exactly what we've discussed here. You've given some really good nuggets of information, some really good tidbits of advice that, in the long run, culminate to a story being told not from the passenger seat, but the
yeah,
driver's seat as you're
exactly.
watching the story unfold.
Yeah,
So, with that being said, Guys, that's the end of today's interview with Kenneth Muyingo. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for joining us, Kenneth.
You're welcome, John. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you so much for the awesome work you're doing and the impact you're making. God bless you.
Thank you. Guys, before we end, this has been season 2, episode 4 of the Author on Wheels podcast. But before we go, I'd like to impose a question. How are you telling your story? We all have a story to tell, and it's up to us to find our unique way of telling our story. But because, as I always say, a story is only as good as the person telling it. So, with that said, thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. See you soon, Kenneth.
Thank you, John.
Bye, guys.